more in depth of roster construction. Our co-host, Stacy Perez, at Stacy_Perez83 over on Twitter. You can always find me at FantasyJ77 on Twitter. Stacy, I've got two TVs going for us right now.
Yep.
I've got the Tampa Bay Lightning game right over here. So if you see me look up, I'm looking for the Bolts game. And then right over here, I've got the Braves game. Now, both of these scores are 2-0. One's in a good 2-0. The other's not so good 2-0 right now. Without knowing which one is winning and which one is losing, please tell me, how are you doing?
Well, I do know who's winning and who's losing. So right now, a little anxious. Need my Lightning to bring it back against the Panthers. Those dirty, stinking Panthers down in Sunrise. Gator, see, this is the benefit of doing a show with somebody who has the exact same team allegiances as you do, is that I'm also a Braves fan, also a Lightning fan. I do not, for some reason, have a TV in this room. It's probably for the best, honestly. So you are tasked with hosting and you're tasked with keeping up with the scores to let us all know, can you accept this challenge?
It doesn't matter if I accept or not. You are the boss here. You are the professor, and my instructions have been given, and we are going to make this happen. And I'm glad you don't have a TV right now, because I think a couple of those hats that are on the wall behind you might be getting thrown.
Yeah.
And we don't need violence
when
we're trying to teach a class.
I may or may not have already thrown something this evening. That's awesome. Nice. That's my one for the night. Hey to Charlene over in the chat. We see you. Thanks for coming back, hanging out with us, Charlene. If you want to draft with us, we are going to be doing that here in just a second. So log on to Underdog. Get ready to hit that enter button in the war room. If you want to draft with us, everybody else out there who's not in the chat yet, where are you? What are you doing? You should be in the chat. And you should also be ready to draft with us. Let's go, guys. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Yes. And by the way, Stacy, we are now simulcast. We are not only on Club Fantasy FFL's YouTube, we are now on the Women of Fantasy's Football YouTube page. And there is a very good reason for this. Not only because you are here, but sometime today in this show, we are going to give out a keyword that you will need, one of 3. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that will get you an entry into a free Scott Fishbowl 14 Avi.
Yes.
Women of Fantasy Football are putting that on. Thanks to them for doing that. Let's talk about the draft tonight. We are going to be doing, like Stacy said, the War Room. Very much like the big board. It is a half-point PPR, 20 rounds. Starting lineup is 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 flex, 12 bench. The difference is the big board was a $10 entry. This is a $5 entry. Again, a 30-second clock. So, Stacy, the bell has about to be ringing. You want to let everybody know when to jump into this draft if they want to join us.
I do. I will. So Jamie already joined. He thought we were in there a little bit early. Jamie, just back out of that draft and come on and join with us this one. Charlene's there. Calvin, Scampers, what's up? Everybody in the chat. Guys, if you are logged on to Underdog, hit the War Room button. I am hitting enter right now. And then I'm going to hit yes. And then we are going to get ready to, oh, look at that, man. These people are hungry for the drafts. Okay. Like people are ready to go. I'm going to get my
Jamie, just do a second one at the same time. There's no problem with doing 2 drafts at once. I mean, you need a mock anyway.
Come on, Jamie, just do 2 drafts at once. I mean, if you're not drafting 2 teams at once in April, what are you doing?
That's right.
I'm just kidding.
No, you're not. No, you're being dead serious. I know you are. I know you are. Speaking of, why are we drafting so early before the NFL draft? Explain to the good people while this board is coming up, while the draft is filling up, what's the benefits to drafting this early?
Yeah. So, one of the benefits to drafting in April, May, June, it's a little bit, some people may say it's too early. I, for one, don't think it's early enough.
It's never too early.
No, it's never too early. Never off season. While I answer that though, Gator, I'm having a little bit of trouble. I've got the board up here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's not letting me share it. I don't know.
That's all right. I can do that. Listen, I can do that part.
Awesome. So I'm here in the 5th spot here, but one of the benefits of drafting in April is that, you're getting a jump on all of those, guys that are the rookies that are out there, kind of taking advantage of we don't know where these people are landing just yet. So, for me, I think you get really good closing line value. Guys, just 1 second here. I need to see who's still
Yeah,
available.
you were good. You were on the clock now.
Golly.
And as you're on the clock, I am trying to figure out. So excuse me for not having this already ready. Trying to figure out where the good position is for us to be on this screen so everybody can see the board. And Stacy, you just took Jamar Chase there. So I love
did
this.
just
I
take
love
Jamar
this start.
I really thought that, Amon-Ra St. Brown would fall to me at 5, but apparently not. So,
I mean,
Jamar,
you get stuck. You get stuck here with Jamar Chase. So I mean, it is what it is.
poor me, right?
Oh, Charlene's in a different draft.
Oh
Dang, burn
no.
it.
Oh, Charlene, that's okay though. At least you're drafting though. You're getting out there. Calvin might be in a different one too. Oh no.
That's but that's the nature of the beast when we're trying to do these best balls. And when you jump into a draft, it's a complete random of who you're going to be with. And it's fine. It is 100% fine. The plus side is we are not necessarily giving you the exact players to draft. We're giving you the strategy of how to do it and how to build your teams to hopefully win the whole thing.
Absolutely. Gator, did you notice where Justin Jefferson went in this draft right now?
Yeah, wide receiver 5.
5. Eighth spot, eighth pick overall. That is, wow. That's the lowest I've seen him go thus far in any of the drafts that I've been doing. But wow.
4 wide receivers and 3 running backs before him.
Yeah.
Quite a surprise. Quite a surprise.
I think so. It looks like a few people, but you know what though, guys, listen, with these tournaments and everything, you just don't know where you're going to land when you jump in, but we are going to be doing a lot of drafts later on in the year where you can sign up ahead of time. So, for sure you're going to draft with us. So just be on the lookout, make sure you're hitting subscribe. That way you get those notifications, follow us. Then you're going to know, like I said, we've got tons of drafts planned throughout the summer. So we're going to have some of the underdog. We're going to have some that fill immediately. We're going to have some that we pre-plan as well. So you can sign up in advance.
Yeah, Stacy, because I have been given the task of updating you, Adam Duvall, 3-run shot.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did. That's right. Doobie.
So back to the original question. What benefits of drafting this early?
So, I think you get really good closing line value on some players, right? But I mean, take a look at Puka Nacua last year. He's probably going to be one that I reference a lot, throughout the season. That's a guy who went probably in the 17th, 18th, 19th rounds of your drafts last year. And look where he's going now.
Right.
One of the top wide receivers in the first round. So he had tremendous value for you if you took him last season. So, and if you did take him last season, you probably took him really early, in the year, as opposed to later on in the season when, he was getting a little bit more steam, getting talked about just a little bit more, not a ton. But that's just something that you want to pay attention to and take advantage of, honestly, is a chance to get some of these rookies at a much cheaper price.
Yeah, and the complete opposite of that was an Austin Eckler, maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
Going quite a bit early and then not having the great season.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Pollard's another one, right?
Who?
So, Tony Pollard.
Who?
Yeah, who? Poor Tony Pollard.
The ghost?
This year, the ghost of Tony Pollard. I think he's going to come back, though, this year. I say come back. I think he'll have more relevance than he did last year. And speaking of, you can get him a tremendous value right now because of that, because you're drafting earlier, right? So I think people are going to not necessarily want to roll the dice on him if he got burned last year. So take him now. He's on a different team in more of a position where I think he can kind of get back into that role that he had with Zeke. And, maybe he'll have a little bit more, relevance there at that point. So
yeah. Joe, we just brought this up that JJ fallen to 8 and absolute crazy surprise there. CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Stacy took Jamar Chase, which Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. I mean, okay, fine. But the three running backs, Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall, mainly the two going before him, was quite a surprise to myself. I think it was a surprise to Stacy that those 2 running backs went before him as well. But yeah, it's insane. Stacy is on the wide receiver train early with Jamar Chase, Nico Collins, and Stephon Diggs.
Absolutely.
Stacy, How do you approach player selection in these best ball drafts compared to your traditional, redrafts?
So in these kind of things, you got to take a look at your format, what are your, and what you're scoring like every single time. And that's really where you start for anything that you're doing. But in these particular ones, you're going to start 3 wide receivers in this tournament. So I want 3 really good receivers. I mean, you can't really make up your receivers the way you can running backs later on in the draft. Like if I wait on receiver, I mean, some of these teams are waiting on receiver. Doesn't look like too many of them are. But let's take Team 7, for example, right? His number 1 guy now is Jalen Waddle, who's the number 2 on his team. I'm looking at, let's, take number 2 team, for example. They've got CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, Mike Evans. Those are 3 ones that they have on their team because they went wide receiver early, right? So you can make that up in running back a little bit later, but you can't necessarily make it up in wide receiver. So for me personally, that's where I'm going to take my guys. I'm going to take quality over quantity at this point. I mean, let's be real here. I'm probably still going to take a lot of receivers. It is a half point PPR, right? And you are starting potentially 3 for sure, potentially 4 with that flex spot. So I want the cream of the crop guys as long as I can get them, because there's a pretty big teardrop too coming up once you kind of get down a little bit. So with those receivers anyway, you're going to start seeing that around the Christian Kirk side. You're going to George Pickens, poor Amari Cooper from last year. So yeah.
Cindy, thank you for joining us.
What's up, Cindy?
She says she was late because of dog issues. I'm hoping she's talking about the 4-legged dog issues and not the husband issues. That's Cindy. I'm not saying anything about your husband. I'm assuming you're not either. Joe says he's just tuning in, and that again, going back to the Justin Jefferson, that is a gift at 8, and I absolutely do not disagree with that at all. Stacy, before we dive too much further into roster construction and go by position, what are some key differences between roster construction strategies in best ball versus season long, real quick?
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of different things that you're going to do in best ball, as far as like looking at your rosters, because you're going to be taking, numerous players at each position here, because you're, with the way that best ball is set up, right, you're not going in and changing these guys out every week. So, you're going to be taking 2 quarterbacks. Sometimes you might only take 1 in a redraft and wait until, it's your bye week. If you take one of the studs, there's really probably not a reason for you to take a second QB in redraft. I mean, unless you're in a really deep league, and that's another story. I'm just talking about your general, 12 team, 10, 12 team that you're playing with. If you're just doing a redraft, either with friends or family, that kind of thing. Tournaments are different. So, like I said, when we're doing a tournament here, I'm on the clock.
Yes.
Let's see. We're in the 4th round. I'm going to take a spin on one of my favorite rookie receivers this year.
Okay.
Rome Odunze, come on down. You're part of the squad. I love it. Do you not love this player, Gator?
Yeah, no, I absolutely love him. There's a couple others that there's one other that I absolutely am in love with, and most people have heard me like throw praises at him. I think the only reason he's not getting the national recognition is because of an injury. I mean, Rome Odunze would have been a great teammate, but I think Jalen Polk's going to get a little bit more run because of the injury to Jalen McMillan, and Jalen McMillan would have been will be a great NFL player. That Washington wide receiving core was awesome.
I'm a big Jalen McMillan fan.
Yes, Jalen McMillan is a stud. Faith is in the chat. One of the co-founders of the Women of Fantasy Football. So appreciate Faith. And I'm not going to leave this on here very long, Faith, but I did want to put it up there so it's gone by. But I love you anyway. All right. So I do want to dive into true roster construction here. And I want you to talk. Let's talk about position by position. And I want to start first with the quarterbacks and what your roster construction mind goes to when you're talking about roster construction with quarterbacks in best ball in this current format.
Yeah. So in best ball, what you're looking at too is, when you're taking these guys, you got a 20-man roster. So you need to kind of parcel out what positions do I want to spend more on? Do I want to collect more players at? So when you're looking at quarterbacks, what I have seen in a lot of this, I got some stats today from Fantasy Footballers. So shout out to you guys. Teams with 2 quarterbacks typically have a higher advance rate than those with 1, 3, or 4. And so what that means, because I want to explain some of that, because I know we're not all kind of as fluent in the lingo of best ball just yet. So advance rate, what that means basically is that how many teams have advanced on to the playoffs out of that tournament. Okay. So when I say that two quarterback teams typically advance at a higher rate than other teams that have either 1, 3, or 4 quarterbacks, that's kind of what I'm talking about there. So that's, you're kind of building a team. You want to go get 2 quarterbacks that are reliable, that have a high, ceilings there, high production, that are going to put up a lot of points for you. As opposed to maybe getting 3 of the lesser guys, right? Because then you're kind of hoping that those guys have good days every week. Whereas you're taking somebody like a CJ Stroud, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, those guys are going to put up numbers for you every single week, barring something absolutely catastrophic happening.
I love that. And Faith, I'll come back to it in a second, Stacy, but Faith,
Yep.
she loves that when I put this up because it only covered me.
Oh, yuck.
And I don't hate it either. I mean, she could have put Gator, she could put anything, and it would have only covered me, which is absolutely probably the best thing in the world for this live stream, is to cover my face. I've been told so many times that I have the face for radio, but that's beside the point. We won't keep. We have fun here. Faith is a diehard Bulldog fan, and we give each other hell back and forth. I mean, she's kicked my hind end the last few years, but we won't. I mean, that's not what we're here to talk about anymore. Let's keep it moving, and let's talk about the running backs and how your roster construction is with them.
Yeah. So with running backs, you're looking at, I think kind of the sweet spot really is somewhere between like 5 and 6 running backs on your team. If you're doing more of a 0 RB build, maybe you take a 7th one. If you're going early, right, you don't need as many because you're taking a stud. If you are trying to build something, with the better running backs, if you do, like I said, 0 RB, you're going to take the lower guys. The guys that are going in the, sorry, I'm doing my pick.
You're on the clock. You are on the clock, so you go right ahead.
So we're in the 6th round now. So now guys that are going off the board are like Kenneth Walker. I just took James Conner to kind of pair with Trey McBride, David Montgomery. Those are the kind of guys that level, that tier of running back. That's where those guys are going. That was my first running back off the board. Mm-hmm. So, if you are doing a 0 RB build, which I'm not doing a true 0 because I probably would have waited a little bit longer. But maybe like a mid 0 is what we'll call it, something like that.
Now, not only is the professor teaching the class, she's now making up terms.
Now I'm just making up words,
which is not a bad thing. I mean, we with Club Fantasy FFL, we have a true 0 RB guy with Joel Worth,
yes.
And now we have a true mid RB.
There we go. Oh, that's probably good that Team 4 took Raheem Mostert, because I have been guilty of grabbing him everywhere I can, because he's at such great value. And I'll probably touch on exposure here in just a little bit.
We're going to hammer exposure because that's such a huge topic when it comes to best ball and what it means. So we'll definitely get to the exposure thing, but I still want you to go ahead and dive into the RBs again.
Let me finish with running backs. Yep. Because now I'm not drafting. But yeah, so basically, like if you've got a team where maybe you're only taking 3 running backs, which I have yet to see, that would be kind of insane. Or if you've got, somewhere, like 8 running backs on the opposite end, you've just overloaded yourself with running backs. Those teams, again, advance rates for those teams are lower than it's going to be with a team that's got about 5 to 6 running backs. Again, all my stats too, just again, coming from fantasy footballers. I was looking up some research and stuff today. So shout out to them when I give credit where credit's due there. Like I said, if you're drafting a little bit earlier, you don't want to, I'm saying if you're drafting early, when I say drafting, I mean, if you're taking a running back earlier, Jay, did they score? Because I was like, you were getting super excited.
No, they didn't score. It's tied 2-2.
Oh, it's tied to, okay. Thank the Lord. Jay, you're getting so excited. I was like, what's going on there? I'm losing my train of thought. Yeah. I hope that means that the Lightning has scored. So if you are drafting a running back in the earlier rounds, you're not going to have to take as many, right? Because you've got a stud guy. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little bit later on, maybe you want to start looking at that team's particular depth chart and looking to see, like, if my number one gets hurt, who can I replace him with? Maybe to try to grab, not necessarily, I'm not pro handcuff all the time, but if you're doing a build like that, it definitely doesn't hurt, especially in a tournament like this. If you are waiting on a running back, whether you're doing the 0 RB or I'm going to use my term now, mid RB, you can wait a little bit on those guys, and you might have to take, 6 running backs at that point. And that's okay. That's really okay, because that goes with what your build is doing. So, just kind of make it make sense. Don't go overboard, as far as, at really any of these positions. You don't need to go crazy is basically kind of what we're getting at here. I was in a draft the other night, Gator. I think I showed you this board. And I still can't decide if this was on purpose or if these guys were just doing some shenanigans in the draft. But somebody took 9 wide receivers in a row. Y'all, that's excessive. That is way too much. Somebody also took 5 quarterbacks, which that's what kind of made me think that it was maybe something a little happening in there. But if you are for real in one of these drafts and you're taking 5 quarterbacks, that is unnecessary. That is absolutely unnecessary. And I can guarantee you everybody else in the draft hates you.
Well, it's not only that. It's not only that. If you're taking 5 quarterbacks, you're doing it completely the wrong way. Because
Absolutely.
guess what? You can only use one of them. And it doesn't matter if 3 of them get 40 points. You've wasted 80 points sitting on your bench that aren't going to count.
100%.
So I know you're coming up on the clock here. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus here, but as much as you and I love Scampers, Mr. Scampers is in the chat, and he is talking noise.
Oh, Scampers. No, no, not Scampers. No, you're not a Panthers fan. Oh, Scampers.
I love you, Scampers, but don't bring that noise to our chat room.
No.
That is unnecessary, vulgar commenting, and that will not go unnoticed. I promise you. I promise you. Stacy.
Oh, Scampers. I'm a little disappointed, Scampers. That you can like a better team than the Panthers, I promise.
I want to move over to the wide receivers. And again, I just want to give you, basically diving into roster construction and how you look at these particular positions. So we've talked about the quarterback. We've talked about the running back. Let's talk about wide receiver and how you look at those.
Well, let's do it. Let's talk wide receiver. So, in wide receiver, so like I just talked about, right? 9, way too many. 9 is too many receivers. And I am very pro wide receiver over here. So, love drafting as many wide receivers as I can, but like 7 to 8 is really going to be kind of that range that you're looking at, right? Because you are starting 3 for sure, plus a flex. So usually that's going to be 4 wide receivers. It's probably going to be an off day if there's somebody in your flex who's not a wide receiver. But you want guys with known quantifiable production, right? You want quality players that are going to be producing consistently for you throughout the season. Those boomer bust guys are a lot of fun, right? You don't want a whole roster full of boomer bust guys, because more often than not, what's going to happen, you're going to have 1 week where it's total bust. And then what do? Right? So that's what I always like to do. Get guys who are consistent. Go grab 1 or 2 boomer bust guys. Grab you a George Pickens. Grab you a Gabe Dave. If that's your, if you enjoy those players and you want them on your team. You don't make a whole team full of George Pickens, though.
Yeah, that's a as you're on the clock there. That would be a wrong way to do it as well. Don't get me wrong. We love the boomer bust weeks. We're going to need those throughout the season when it comes to best ball. But we don't want 5 boomer bust guys all on the same team, because if they all bust on the same week, we got 5 positions of 0. So add the boomer bust guy, 1, 2 of them. That's cool. Maybe 3 of them at max.
Yeah.
When you stretch them out between the multiple positions. But if you have 3 wide receivers that are boomer bust, like Gabe Davis or George Pickens, and take it a Darnell Mooney from 2 years ago.
That's a great example.
That now we've got those 3 guys, and we have to start 3 wide receivers and a flex. 99% of the time, we're going to start a wide receiver in the flex. Now we've got it. We've slimmed our choices down on what we can do as far as our boom bust weeks. Thomas says going RB heavy the first 3 rounds is the way to go this year. 0 RB strategy will not win Best Ball Mania 5.
RB
Thomas,
heavy the first 3
I'm
rounds.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
you're right, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think Mr. Joel Worth himself at the Joel Worth over there on Twitter might have some argument for you. Hit him up. I would love to see this argument play out, and not necessarily an argument, but a great discussion. So
I would too. You never know what's going to happen every year, right? Like everybody took, your stud quarterbacks so early last year, right? You couldn't get out of the second round without having taken Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar, even. And how did that really work out for all of us? Not really that great, right? And so now you kind of see that reflected in ADP and how those guys are being drafted. They're getting bumped down a little bit. I mean, where did Mahomes go in this draft? Let's take a look here at the board.
but he was in the fifth round.
Fifth round
Fifth round.
as the 5th quarterback taken off the board. That's wild, right? But that's a reflection of what happened last season.
Well, it's not only that, but I think people are getting sharper to it's basically a one QB. Yeah. You can go if you go and get a Patrick Mahomes right now, even in the 5th round, even if he's QB 5 off the board. Now you can wait till round 13, round 14, and if there's a quarterback left, even if it's a Derek Carr style, you're only going to need him for 1 week. And listen, if Patrick Mahomes gets injured, that best ball team is probably not going to make it anyway, right? Exactly. So we're not playing on injury. We're playing. We're only going to need this other quarterback for 1 week. So I don't hate going and getting Patrick Mahomes in the 5th and then sitting there and not getting another quarterback until 12, 13, 14, somewhere in that range. Now, if you go back up and you look and he's got Patrick Mahomes and then turns around the next round and takes a Jared Goff, again, going back to what I was saying about whenever you have 5 quarterbacks and they all score 40 points, you're wasting all of the points because you don't need them. You're only going to get one of those 40-point weeks.
Right. Exactly. And then that's kind of that's why it kind of made me feel like maybe something's up here in that particular draft. Because literally he took like 5 of the top guys. So I if there had been a chat in that draft, it would have been hot.
Right.
I'm sure. But so we talked about, with the quarterbacks here. I did go a little bit earlier on QB than I had originally meant to. But if you take a look at after I took Brock Purdy in the 8th, oh gosh, I'm on the clock again. What happened was there was quite the run on quarterbacks at this point. So guys, we're now in the 11th round here. I am going to take somebody that, even though we had a bad year last year, does not scare me. Give me Jahan Dotson. I still have faith. I have faith in you, Jahan.
He's going to have a new quarterback this year.
Yeah. Curtis Samuel's gone. He's the number 2 now. Come on.
Very, very fair. Listen, I have not gotten off the Jahan Dotson train. I mean, in Dynasty, I'm able to get him for super cheap. So give me all the Jahan Dotson I can get. Going back to the roster construction, let's talk a little bit about tight ends.
Yes. So real quick though, I wanted to finish with the QBs, what we had been talking about, because it just kind of popped up. But right after I took Brock Purdy, I was going to wait for a little bit. But then you see after Purdy, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 quarterbacks that went right after I did that. So, the well was getting a little dry there. So I went ahead and grabbed Cousins to kind of make sure that I got one of those guys that I think is going to have a ton of production this year. And I'm set at quarterback now. I don't need anybody else. I've got Brock Purdy and I've got Kirk Cousins. I'm good. If they happen to have the same bye week, I'm probably in trouble. But that's just gonna have to be the way it is. So since we don't know yet, schedule's not out. We should know that pretty soon though at some point. But I think those 2 quarterbacks, you've got 2 guys, elite offenses. I'm no problem there. Gator, do you ever think we'd be saying elite offenses about Atlanta?
Did you ever? No.
We are now. All right. So to answer your question about tight ends, again, according to Fantasy Footballers, and shout out to them for putting all these stats out. I one day aspire to be somebody that can dig into all of the info that's out there and kind of mine that data and get those stats. And until I don't have my day job anymore, that's probably never going to happen. So I'm gonna have to rely on some other people who are much better researchers than me. But teams with 3 tight ends have a higher advance rate. However, those teams that have 2 tight ends have more upside getting into the later rounds of the playoffs and the finals, which is obviously, where you want to be at the end of the day. You want to be in the finals with your team. So, so that's what those stats are kind of saying, is that 2 tight end teams, that's where you're seeing more value, more, teams that are winning and coming away with those bigger prizes. So 2 tight ends. I have taken Trey McBride as one of my guys here, somebody that, I, along with everybody else, thinks is going to have an amazing year this season. Came on really well with, Kyler at the end of the year there. Oh man, I'm up. So I am actually going to be grabbing a tight end here. I'm just trying to decide who it is. I think I'm going to take somebody. I've taken Luke Musgrave several times, kind of in this area, but I think I'm going to try to expose my team to somebody else. I'm going to grab a Pat
Okay.
Fryermuth. Yeah, I like Dalton Schultz. He would have fit in with my team there with my Texans, but he went a little bit before, so I don't think there's nothing wrong with big old Patty Fries.
Jonathan says he still thinks an elite tight end is heavily undervalued, especially in these 20-round contests. Thoughts on that?
It's not a tight end premium. So if it's a tight end premium, then we're talking a whole totally different story. But this is not a tight end premium. So I don't know if Jonathan, I don't know if you're just talking about this particular War Room draft, or I mean, I think almost all the underdog ones are just regular. It's just half point PPR, right? I don't think there's any that are tight end premium. Do you know, Gator, off the top of your head?
You'd be the answer on that one.
I don't recall any, and I mean, I could be wrong because I didn't play in every single one, but I don't recall seeing one that was a tight end premium. So these in particular, if we're talking about these, yeah, I mean, those elite tight ends are probably going to be a little bit more undervalued, although you did see Sam Laporta go in the 4th round. So he went very high. He was the first one off the board.
Yeah, somebody I am super high on this year. And I've got him in a couple leagues that people have offered me pretty damn good value for, and then of course a couple people have offered me garbage for, is the tight end out of Dallas. Now his name just escaped me. Ferguson.
Yeah.
And here's the one thing I like about him is, yeah, you still got CeeDee Lamb. They're probably going to add another wide receiver in the draft. Brandon Cook was there last year. You had Gallup there last year. But did you realize, and you may not have known this, but he still received over 100 targets last year.
Yeah.
Ferguson.
I believe it. I 100% believe it, because Dak loves to throw to his tight end, right? That's so whoever's the tight end in Dallas, I don't really care who you are. You're definitely on my radar for fantasy, because we know how much Dak loves his guys.
Yeah, our guy Joel popping back in. Half point PPR. TDs are king for the tight ends, and that's that's exactly what we want. We want volume, and we want TDs.
Yeah, exactly.
When it comes to the tight end position, Stacy, how do you prioritize positions when drafting in best ball? I know you prioritize the wide receiver position with the utmost importance.
Yes. So I'm looking at wide receivers, especially like when you're playing in these tournaments, even if it's tournament, if it's redraft, whatever it is, that start 3 with a flex, right? Because like I said, potentially most of the time you're going to be starting those 4 guys. You want those 4 quality wide receivers in there. And then at that point, I'm probably going to go with a stud running back or a quarterback then. Tight end, really, unless you're going to get those elite guys, and it's a very small handful. If you're going to get Laporta, Andrews, Hawkinson when he's healthy, right? And I mean, you can make an even argument too. I mean, Kelsey didn't really come on that much until later. I mean, I think everybody that had Kelsey last year was pretty frustrated, with the production levels. And so unless you get those top few guys, the rest of your tight ends are gonna be pretty meh, right? It was those few guys were the only ones averaging 10 points or more in PPR format last year. So if the rest of the field is only averaging 9 points below, that tells me that's not a very productive position. We all know that tight end. What do we say? Tight end's a wasteland, right? So I'm not really, if I can't get one of those guys, one of those super high productive elite tight ends, I'm probably waiting. at that point, because it's probably not going to make too much a difference. After that, of course, you want your guys on good offenses, and we can talk a little bit more about strategy wise and which tight ends we prefer. We're going to have more opportunity a little bit later, because that's not really answering the question that Gator asked. But I'm going to go receiver. I'm going to go, I would say probably quarterback then at that point. Receiver, quarterback, running back, tight end is how I'm going to prioritize, putting my team together. You could always flip, running back and quarterback, if you're going to get somebody who's a little bit higher up on the food chain with your running backs. But that's kind of what that would look like for me.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you, except for the quarterback. In a sense, I can push quarterback a little bit further down the road if everybody else is allowing the quarterback to fall a little bit. Now, I still want to get one of those elite guys, those top 5 guys, top 6 guys. So I will absolutely wait to get somebody, knowing that that everybody else is still waiting at the same time. Now, if I'm sitting there in, for instance, I'm 7 picks away and there's a quarterback run of 5 or 6 quarterbacks, and then it's me, well, then I'm just going to wait. I'm just absolutely going to fade it all together. Again, it's a onesie position. So I'm going to go and try to capitalize somewhere else, whether that's wide receiver, whether that's going and getting the running back. So I do agree with you. Jonathan says, I'm fairly comfortable with the Ingram Bowers tight end tier. I like that as well. Yeah.
I do. I like both of those. I got to tell you, I have a little bit of a hot take with Brock Bowers. I'm so nervous, right? Because not everybody is Sam Laporta. Not everybody can replicate what Sam Laporta did in his first year. And I think it surprised everybody that Sam Laporta even did what he did in his first year, right? So it's making me a little bit nervous to rely so much on Brock Bowers, thinking that he's going to come in and be automatically super productive, kind of replicate the Laporta year last year. It makes me a little bit nervous because last year, what did we all hear? How much, oh, Michael Mayer is such a great tight end. Unfortunately, he landed on a team where he wasn't used as much until really the end of the season. So I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case with Bowers, but it does kind of make me a little bit nervous to go in with those expectations being so high. I don't know. I know. Don't let Faith hear that. I know, man. I know. And I know that that's like not the popular thing to say, but it does make me just a little nervous.
No,
Right?
100%. I mean, when in here, I'm going to make Faith even more mad at me because a few years ago, there was a guy out of Florida. His name is Kyle Pitts, I believe. He was a 1-year wonder coming out of Florida, had a phenomenal rookie year. When I say phenomenal, I mean comparatively.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, we have the Sam Laporta, right? But everybody was looking for the next Kyle Pitts. Then you had, you had Dalton Kincaid, like you said, Michael Mayer. There was the Sam Laporta popped on the scene. Landing spot absolutely is going to matter with these guys, right?
Matters so
much. The one that will hurt Faith's feelings the most, and I'm gonna throw this dig at Faith for a second, is if it does happen and he goes to Indianapolis and he has to catch balls from a Gator. I mean, I will message Faith every single day. Hey, Faith, how's that Bulldog catching from the Gator? Something. I will. No. I listen. Bowers is going to be a phenomenal talent, but I think again, tight end number 1. Number 2, he's a tweener. He's not necessarily a blocking tight end. So is he going to be on the field enough? Right. Then the third one is the landing spot for me. And we'll find that out probably Thursday about 8:15 or so, 8:20, somewhere in that range. It'll be in the first hour of the draft. I'm assuming.
I feel good about him going in the first round, though. I feel like that's probably.
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. He's going to go in the first round. There's no question. He's going to go probably in the top 10 picks, maybe 12 if he doesn't get chosen or somebody trades up for him. We just want to give a shout out to Rum Boys Robbie. That's quick. Great. I want to let me get this off of this screen here, Robbie. Hang on. My dude hooked us up with some Underdog swag.
Very nice.
Yes. So appreciate the Rum Boys Fantasy Network coming through. The Kyle Pitts. Bleh. And then Jonathan jumping back in, landing spot absolutely is going to
Yes.
matter for these quarterbacks. Took
Oh,
Jamie in another draft took
I'm
QJ in the
sorry.
13th. Well, I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
there's a chance. There is a chance. Stacy, I want to get to something that I know, we've only got 5 more rounds or so of this draft, 4.5 rounds.
We're coming in the end of round 16.
Yeah, I know you're fixing to be on the clock here in just a few seconds, about a minute or so. You'll be on the clock. So
Yeah.
I want to know your thoughts when it comes to best ball and stacking.
Yes.
Right. So quarterback, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end, quarterback, running back, in the best ball format. When do you typically start to look at these when you're building out your roster? And as you are coming up on the clock here, once you make your pick, let's talk about the strategy of stacking.
Yeah. So this is definitely going to be an entire show in and of itself. With the stacking, especially once once the schedule comes out and we know a little bit more about, what teams are playing, each other at the end of the season. So we'll definitely have some more to talk about there. I'm about to do something really gross here, Gator. Woof.
Oh,
Woof.
no, that's not gross. That's not gross.
Damian Pierce. I don't know. He goes with my build. So that's how I'm going to justify that pick. But as far as stacking goes, look, guys, if you do enough of these, you kind of have in mind, hey, I'd really like to try to put together a certain stack. I'd really like to try to get, this offense. Maybe it's a high value offense that you're just dying to have, or maybe you're trying a little bit later to be a little bit sneaky and maybe try to grab a little bit cheaper one to do. Who knows? You can do both, and there's going to be so many different, variations that you can do. But when you're talking about stacking, what the purpose of that is that, you're looking at getting maybe the quarterback and the wide receiver. That's the most popular stack to do, right? Because if you're getting one of those stud receivers, you want his quarterback to go along with him because you're expecting him to have a lot of production. Who's feeding him that production? His quarterback is. So why wouldn't you want to double dip with your points there? Now, listen, stacking is not the end all be all. You don't have to be a slave to stacking. Okay. I think it's more important in tournaments like this than it is in a standalone. That you're doing, with just 11 of your other friends, you don't really need to worry about that as much. But in tournaments like this, you want to capitalize on the points for your offenses, right? So that's why I went ahead and I grabbed Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, right? And trust me, if CJ Stroud had been available, he'd been coming home to my team too. That's a stack I need to chill out on because I think I've done them a few times there already with Houston. I can't quit Houston. I think they're my second favorite team besides the Packers.
Those uniforms, did you see that uniform drop today with them?
They're so nice, right? Oh, my
they're
goodness.
all white helmets, and all white unis are fire. The all red is fire. I might be I'm going to have to switch alliances, or I don't want to do that because I love my Bucks.
That's right.
There may have to be an addition of a new Texans white helmet sitting back here. I just might have to add that to the collection. Hey, by the way, 5-0 Braves win. Max Fried, complete game, 92 pitches.
Yes.
Throwing that out there.
I thank you, Max Fried. You're on my fantasy team. Love you.
I just want to remind everybody we got a few more minutes here with the draft going on. I do want to remind everybody we are going to drop a keyword here very, very shortly for the Women of Fantasy Football is giving away five Scott Fishbowl 14 Avies. We're going to give away one keyword. There's going to be a couple other keywords that I'll give you all the details here shortly on that. I just wanted you to know that, hey, I hadn't forgotten. We are still we are still working on it. We're going to do it. Jonathan in the chat says Meyer is a guy that could have more production in year 2, especially with Minshew, who prefers the short yardage options. Thoughts there?
I'm right there with you. With Jonathan, with Mayer being more productive in his second year, that's typically when the tight ends come on, right? I mean, with their rookie years, they're spending so much time learning 2 separate positions, not just one, right? So getting used to the NFL, and you're having to learn how to block and play receiver. So, that's why a lot of them don't produce as well their first year. Second year, though, I absolutely think you're right. I mean, I think he's going to stand out a little bit more. He's going to have more opportunities to shine, getting in there with Gardner or, if they end up drafting somebody else, who knows? But I think you're absolutely right there on Mayer, and I am not afraid to take him towards, a little bit later as one of those guys that if you haven't taken a tight end a little bit, waited a little bit on that, he's available for you. Where did he go in our draft? Let's take a look. There he goes. So end of the 13th round there to team 12.
I mean, that's probably good value right there for him.
Right. So when we talk about closing line value, right, Jonathan, we're talking about that earlier. Why are you drafting in April? Why are you drafting in May? Well, I'm going to go get Michael Mayer in the 13th round. And then when he ends up producing and he does a lot better than he did last year, I'm going to look like a genius because I took him in the 13th round.
Yep. And going back to Jamie said he took QJ in the 13th in another draft. Jonathan, QJ is a boom or bust play. Not only is it a boom or bust, but he's the kind of boom or bust we were talking about. The Gabe Davis style. Listen, he shows up 1 week and he scores 2 touchdowns, 60 yards, on 7 receptions. Put it on Mike. I don't care.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care. And you stole him in the 13th round. Calvin says he took Mooney in the 13th round. And then Angie, what is happening, girl? Houston is hard not to love right now. And
agreed.
100% agree. 100% agree. Scampers, Bob just made the save of the century. You might have been.
We're talking Bob Raff. I don't know. I can't say his name. And I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to say the goalie from Florida.
I'm going to throw this up for Jonathan. I want to come back to this. I'm going to star it, and I will get back to this question here in just a minute. Going with your stacking, what you were talking about was stacking.
Mm-hmm.
How important is drafting handcuffs or backups to your key starters in best ball, and how does it affect your roster construction when you are doing it?
So I think it's important to be aware of depth charts, right? Especially when you're looking at your running backs. This is the most important place when you're talking about handcuffs, right? You're not handcuffing a wide receiver, not handcuffing a tight end, you're handcuffing your running backs. Why are you doing that? Because that position is incredibly volatile and they just experience so much injury throughout the season. So you want to have guys that are an injury away, as they like to say, to having playing time, having opportunity to get on the field and produce, right? You could even say, beyond maybe removed from that too, maybe the third guy there on the depth chart. Because like I said, those injuries happen so frequently to running backs. We saw it all last season. I mean, we see it every season. And every season doesn't it feel, Gator, like it's, gosh, is it worse this year? I feel like everybody's getting hurt worse than they did the year before. So, you want to be able to have those guys on your team, make your team make sense, right? You don't need to go grab, the entire chart for a specific team. But if you've got somebody that maybe is potential injury risk or, something like that, you want to go and be, keep an eye out for those guys that you can grab in the 20th round on your team. I took James Conner as my first running back, right? So that's a pretty big injury risk. So now I'm probably going to want to look through, are there any Arizona running backs still available on the board? There's Michael Carter. That doesn't exactly, blow your skirt up or anything here. But if guys get hurt, he's on the team and he's going to get playing time. So it may look ugly. You don't have to watch the game. You just have to enjoy the points that you get afterwards.
Yep. 100% agree there. You took the rookie earlier. So yes. I wanted to find out your approach when
Trey Benson, or are you talking about Rome?
Both of them. Okay. Just rookies in general. What is your approach when drafting the rookies in these best ball leagues, considering their volatility, potential upside, but also their volatility, which is probably the most important part, right?
Yeah. One of the fun things about drafting this early is, you're just kind of guessing on landing spots. So you have no idea, who could hit, who doesn't. And things definitely change. Right now and I've said this last time, but right now, when you take Marvin Harrison Jr. today before Thursday, it's the highest you're ever going to pay for him, right? Because if he lands somewhere horrible, like New England, okay, I'm like knocking on wood over here because I don't want that to happen. But if he ends up somewhere like in New England, he's not going to be as productive as he would maybe if he ended up over, in Arizona, which is hopefully where he goes. So you have to kind of keep those things in mind as well. And you aren't going to know, there's going to be some surprises, maybe some guys that, end up going on day 7 or don't even get drafted. You don't even know. There were a few of those last year. So that's one of the fun things about rookies. I tend not to overload on rookies too early in the year, especially without knowing their specific landing spots. Am I? Oh, I'm not up yet. It's the person in front of me. But once I know their landing spots, I feel a little bit more comfortable, especially as the off season goes on. Of course, that comes with the risk of everybody else knows their landing spots, and now you're probably paying a little bit more of a premium for those guys. I'm going to take. I am going to take Michael Carter with my last pick, only because I have James Conner. And I just absolutely broke all my rules here with 8 running backs and 8 wide receivers. But that's
This is the epitome of a professor saying, "Do as I say, not as I do."
Yes, I know. And then I kept trying to watch my numbers as I was getting there, because if I had taken one more receiver, I would have been at 9 receivers after I just railed against that guy that took 9 receivers a couple drafts ago.
There you go. Yeah, but he took 9 in a row, right? So
He did take 9 all in a row. It was wild.
That's the big one. That's the
Yeah.
big one. All right. So last question I have for you. You touched on this a little bit earlier. Again, this may be something we have to elaborate on another show, but how do you handle your exposure to players?
Yeah. So one of the great things about drafting on Underdog is that they have a tab for you to see your exposure for all of your different teams, which is great. And other sites that don't have that, you're probably just going to have to track it either on your own if you have a lot of teams there, or just kind of just be aware of who you have. But let's just talk specifically about Underdog because it does have that option for you. You want to make sure that you're not just drafting the same players over and over and over. And, that's something that I always tend to make myself, kind of aware of. Hey, you've taken CJ Stroud every single draft. You got to back off. You got to stop, right? You want to get exposure to other players. Take, for example, I think, who did I have in my notes? I think it was Josh Jacobs. Yeah. So Josh Jacobs in 2022, I think a lot of people were scared off of him and weren't drafting him. It looked like maybe he wasn't going to be with the Raiders and wasn't really sure what was going on there. And so a lot of people were afraid to take him. Well, that was a year that he just absolutely went off. So everybody who did take a risk on him, was absolutely rewarded. So that's why it's so important to get exposure to so many different players on your team. So, go after somebody that you might not necessarily have drafted or you might have shied away from, at least on one team. When you're doing these $5 best balls, $10 best balls, you have an opportunity to do more than one team. This isn't your only team that you're doing, right? So you can roll the dice, you can do different builds, have different players on your team, and it's not going to be the end of the world, right? If they don't do well. Now, like I said, this is for these tournaments that are a little bit, more, easier to enter, don't require you spending thousands of dollars. If you're on, maybe like a high stakes team, it's your only team, you're not going to do that. You're going to go after and get the guys that you want, right? Specifically, this advice is for exposure regarding these tournaments that, a little bit lower in value, but have a higher reward at the end, that you can do multiples of.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love the being able to see the exposure, which, like you said, on Underdog, they make it very, very simple for you to do that.
Very user-friendly.
All right, Stacy, let's get rid of this draft board for just a quick minute here. We probably will not go over the draft board tonight.
I think you're going to have to pull it down. For some reason, it's not.
That's fine. I can do that. And then I will bring us back up. So we won't go over the draft board tonight. Over these next couple of weeks, we are doing this to try to get to a point of learning so that we have the absolute, at least the foundation of building a best ball team and moving forward to get into some of these bigger tournaments and being able to at least feel like we know what we're doing, right?
Absolutely.
And yes, Scampers, I know you were fully exposed to Gus Edwards. That is what Scampers do.
Yes, when he says fully exposed, I'm sure that means that he has a lot of Gus Edwards on his team, and does not mean that he's actually.
Oh, okay. I see. I took it the complete wrong way then. Okay, I get it. Never mind. All right, let's give away some SFB 14 Avies. The Women of Fantasy Football wants to give away five of them. Ladies, here is a chance to win your very own SFB 14 Avie. We are partnering with Fantasy Cares to do just that. We're going to give you one of the keywords that completes the phrase that is needed to win. The other two keywords can be found on Wednesday's Who's Your Caddy. That will be tomorrow morning. I believe that drops about 9 a.m. or so. And that will be with our very own Kelly Singh. And then the third one, because we are partnering with Fantasy Cares, Russ Fisher will give out. That will be Thursday afternoon, I believe. Are you ready for today's keyword, Stacy?
Ready. Let's go. Everybody listen up.
Here is your keyword. I'm just going to put it up on the screen.
I hope you're watching.
Keyword is of.
Yes.
OF. Your keyword for tonight is of. Here's how this works. When you complete the phrase, which you won't know what the phrase is until you get the other two words, you will then go to Twitter, post it, and tag @women_of_FF. The first 5 ladies to complete the phrase gets their very own Scott Fishbowl 14 Avie. It is really, really that simple. Keyword tonight is, once again, of. Get ready for your other two words tomorrow morning and then tomorrow afternoon. If you want your free Avie, make sure you post it on Twitter. Make sure you're tagging @women_of_FF when you do that.
Yes. And make sure that you know that Avie means avatar and not aviators, like my auto corrected for me in the Women of Fantasy Football chat that I did earlier today when I was letting everybody know that we would be doing this later tonight. We're giving away Scott Fishbowl aviators, which is not what we're doing. Not at all. We're giving away the avatars, guys, not aviators. Although if he had some aviators made for Scott Fishbowl, I think everybody would buy them. They would be amazing.
Yes, they would be, because then it would fit with the theme too.
Exactly.
Top Gun.
Yeah, on that, who do we need to talk to get sunglasses for Scott Fishbowl made? Who can we discuss this with?
Oh, Ray-Ban, probably.
Oh, well, let's get on it. Let's get a sponsorship with Ray-Ban.
Let's get sponsorship with Ray-Ban. All right, let's close out the show. Don't forget to subscribe to Club Fantasy. Make sure you hit that thumbs up for us. Please follow Stacy at Stacy_Perez 83.
That's right.
Over there on Twitter. You can follow me at FantasyJ77 on Twitter. Look, we are like this close. We are like within 160 subscribers of getting to that 1,000 mark. The only way we can do that is with you. Please, if you like what we're putting out, hit that subscribe button. I'm not even going to ask you to hit the notifications button, but if you want to hit the notification so that when you know when we go live, that would be awesome as well. Quick rundown of what we do throughout the week. Of course, Tuesday nights, we are right here with Masterclass, our best ball. We are moving into the high stakes here shortly, Stacy. We are fixing to ring bell on a high stakes. FFPC, a little Kentucky draft possibly this year.
Yep. They've got their slow drafts out right now. They don't have any lives yet. As soon as they post some lives, I will get us on the schedule for that. But yeah, can't really do slow drafts on a show.
No, that would be too hard. And yes, Scampers, you were always welcome for the silliness, for the hockey talk, and absolutely for the grilling. When you come in here spitting fire like you did tonight, talking about cats. We don't like cats unless it's a Scampers. That's it. That's the only cat we want in our chat. We don't want to talk about any other cats. Tuesday, I brought up Masterclass. Tomorrow morning, we have Who's Your Caddy, the Golf DFS at 9 a.m. Wednesday, tomorrow night at 7 p.m., no pun intended, our flagship show right here on Club Fantasy FFL. And then on Saturday, one of 2 mock shows we do on a weekly basis, Mock It Like It's Hot at 11 a.m. Sunday at 11 a.m., Dynasty After Party with the very one and only Joel Worth, who was in the chat tonight. And then, of course, my main show on Monday nights, Mocking with the Stars. Next week, guest, it'll be the first mock that we have true landing spots. We have Iowa Mike next week, Stacy. from South Harmon.
No way.
Yes, we are going to be talking landing spots. We're going to be talking a little, Mike's into the college ball too, So we got a good bit going on next week. And then of course our show next Tuesday will finally have landing spots for some of these players. We won't be able to talk so much about the schedule or correlation, and we'll talk more about that during the summer. But yeah, we'll finally have some landing spots for some of these rookies that you have drafted over the last few weeks. And be able to dive in a little bit harder, maybe on those rookies with their landing spots.
Exactly. And we're going to be doing one more underdog next week because we want to be able to see ADP, so average draft position, where it is now, right, pre-draft versus what it looks like after the draft, on the same platform. So we're going to be doing that. And then like Gator said, we're going to be, dipping our toes into the high stakes streets.
Absolutely. Stacy, tell the good viewers and listeners where they can find you and what you are working on.
Guys, you can find me at Stacy_Perez 83 over on the Twitter, the X, whatever it is that you want to call it. Make sure to find me there. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts about the draft, anything that you want us to be drafting this summer. If there's a draft out there that you're in that you want us to jump in and cover, let me know, let Gator know. If there's a platform out there that you want to see us do, we've already heard we've got some requests for FFPC. We are going to be doing that. We've got a couple other ones lined up as well. So if there's something out there specifically that you want to learn more about, that you want us to play on, please let us know. Because, if you guys want it, we're going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Stacey said, let either one of us know, both of us know. I don't care. Both of our DMs are open. So shoot us a DM on Twitter, email us, however you can get a hold of us. Absolutely do that. So going forward, we can absolutely give you the content that you want on the platform that you would prefer. So that's our goal ultimately. Quick one more quick shout out to the state of Florida, by the way. State of Florida now has Underdog Pick'em. So
nice.
go check out Underdog Pick'em over there on in the state of Florida. If you are there, you can now do that. Stacy, great show. We had fun. Charlene, thank you for joining us. Charlene says she's going to try next time to actually get in the right draft. Well, again, Charlene, that's not something we can control, nor can you, by the way. I'm not saying it's your fault. It is what it is. Joel Worth, Ohio needs to have a chat with Florida. It is what it is, Joel. Have fun. Stacy, next week, baby. Next week.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Happy draft week, everybody.
Absolutely. Happy draft week. We will see y'all next week.
Yes.